again, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Matt for Remnant TV. I'm in Italy actually this week. We are covering the Roman Forum's summer symposium here in Gardone Riviera. Have a few hours off, and so I'm going to take the little scooter behind us up into the hills to show you some of the beautiful little gems, the pre-Vatican II, obviously, churches for which Italy is very famous, but unfortunately they are no longer on any tourist map that you see. So we're going to take a few minutes off here from the Forum and go up and show you some of the most beautiful little churches in all of Italy. This is the Church of St. Bartholomew. This is very typical of what you find in a lot of these little areas, tucked away in the mountains. You have the impression of here, when you walk around these places, which really there are no tourists up here, we're up too high, what life would have been like. The little houses here and there that are there. The people would have come out in the morning, maybe tended to a garden, come down to church here for Mass, and the simplicity, and I think one of the main things that strikes you is the idea of travel just wouldn't have been entering into their minds. They weren't going anywhere. They were staying here, very content to live up here. The church is in the center of the town, of course, and it was a very simple life. And you can still, when you walk around these places, you can still absorb some of that. And what's interesting about this little Church of St. Bartholomew is that when we go inside in a moment, you can see that the ravages of Vatican II really didn't reach a lot of these places up in the hills. So for example, you'll see the old traditional confessional box, the communion rail is still mostly intact, the high altar is there, the beautiful artwork is still there. Let's take a look. You really are struck, even in a small church like this, by the beauty of this is a tiny little village, so there wasn't a lot of money involved in any of this, and yet every penny that they had, they obviously put into their church out of sheer love for the faith and for what they believed was more important than anything else, including their own homes. Obviously, the money went here. So. And to think, you know, that someone decided that it was a good idea to come in and just destroy all of this and take this beautiful testimony to faith and belief in the saints and the angels and the Blessed Mother, to just rip them off the walls and tear it out, tear down the sanctuaries and everything else, and just make it into a, I'm sorry, but a very Protestant-looking, you know, building, church. It's just, it's a shame. It just strikes you that that was done by people who essentially were marauders. They were at war with everything that these people believed in, and they came in and destroyed it. And it's just interesting to see in little places like this where they didn't quite get the job done yet, just how much faith the people had before the modernists got busy. So now this is the Church of St. Bernardo, and the interesting thing is we just came maybe a half mile on the next peak over where we had the Church of St. Bartholomew. So it gives you an idea of when in a Catholic country like this, they didn't have cars, let alone airplanes or anything else to go to great distances for Mass. So they just built their churches right in their town again. And you can see by this one, this particular example, that they chose the most beautiful place for the church and the place where it was most accessible in the middle of a little village. Let's take a look at the view that these people would have had, the view of the lake from their church, again, on this most choice little mound that they chose to build it on. Come over here and take a look at this view, and this is what they saw every morning after Mass. I suppose they would come out and they would visit with their friends. There's kind of a little gathering area here. And you can really see here why the Catholic life would have been so attractive. I mean, this is just unbelievably beautiful. Why would they have felt the need to go traveling around the world like we do all the time to escape this? This is just so beautiful. So now we're again overlooking Lake Garda. Just take a look and breathe in that Catholic atmosphere right outside the church. Come out here in the morning. Unbelievable. And again, down in that little town, you can see each one of those little towns. That's a little one there. I think that's St. Michael. And there's another little church there, another little church there. So the entire mountainside here is just dotted with these little villages. And of course, the most important thing in their daily lives was the Catholic Church. Okay, so this is kind of fun. Now we're down actually on Lake Garda. We've come down out of the mountains a little bit. Got a couple more we want to hit up on the top still today. But this, we just couldn't pass this church up. This is a church, the Church of St. Lawrence of Rome. And it's another thing buried in all of these tourist attractions, this beautiful little church. 1389 when it was built. It's actually the Church of St. Andrew the Apostle. But I think it's worth going inside, looking at some of the beautiful works of art, keeping in mind that this little gem dates back to the late 14th century. Some of the changes that were made 200 years later were made by St. Charles Borromeo, but I think it gives us a good example. And there's a crypt in here that contains the limbs of St. Lawrence of Rome. It's definitely worth taking a look at. So let's just step inside and check this out. And once again, we see this sort of heartbreaking stamp of the modernist invasion of the church, this beautiful altar at the back. But as we pull out, you can see the telltale sign that they've been here with a little butcher block table altar setting up, even obscuring the view of the beautiful tabernacle at the rear. So you can see in some of these beautiful works of art that they were just too precious to people, and in many cases too old to be dispensed with when they began making the changes. But what a difference. Everywhere you look, you see, in this church, you see an indication of the faith of the people, and you compare that to the modern churches with the white and barren walls and maybe one little grotesque crucifix at the front to indicate that it's Catholic. We've come a long way from this era, obviously. So obviously here in Italy we could go on and on from one mountain peak to the next and find churches that are just stunningly beautiful, and they teach us so much about not only our history but the revolution of the Catholic Church. But before we wrap this episode up, we're going to go to one more church up in Gardone Riviera, and we have a little surprise there for you. So come with us, one more church, you have to check this out. So as you can see here in Gardone Riviera, the traditional Latin Mass is being preserved. As a matter of fact, this conference is full of people from all over Europe, all over the United States, who come here for the express purpose of preserving the liturgical tradition of the Catholic Church and also the academic tradition, the traditional theology and philosophy and so forth. But the thing is, we're firmly convinced, and people at this conference are convinced, that it's only a matter of time before all the little churches that we saw that are so beautifully preserved here in Italy and in many Catholic countries, once the church restores herself and gets back to her senses, if you will, these places, these churches will once again be ready for a Catholic counter-reformation. They'll be all set up. The infrastructure, in other words, is completely in place. All we need is for the people in the church to begin to respond to the growing traditional Catholic movement around the world that's kind of tired of the way things are going. So this conference is all about that. If you really want to see these places, we tried to show you some of them by video, via the scooter, the Motorino, but if you really want to see it, you got to come to this event and take in the lectures and also go and visit some of these beautiful little churches, which really offer a lot of hope for the future, and they also show us where we came from, a beautiful Catholic tradition that is in such desperate need of restoration. For Remnant TV, I'm Michael Matt in Gardone Riviera, and we'll see you next time.